Welcome to the Neurostimulation Podcast, where we explore fascinating aspects of neuroscience and clinical neurostimulation to enhance personal health and wellness. I'm Michael Passmore, and today's episode is one that I've particularly been looking forward to. We're joined today by Tim Thomas, an Australian Special Forces veteran turned mental health advocate and founder of the Breathwork In Bed program. Tim's innovative approach to breathwork is not only helping people achieve better sleep, but also creating profound connections between mental clarity, physical health, and emotional resilience. His book, Breathwork in Bed, dives into the science and practice of breathwork and how it can help to quiet the overthinking mind, reduce stress, and optimize sleep, an essential foundation for neurological and overall health. In this episode, we'll unpack Tim's journey, the neuroscience behind breathwork, and how these practices can complement and enhance what we understand about neurostimulation and brain health. Tim, welcome to the podcast. It's an honor to have you here.
It's great to be here, Dr. Mike. I'm really looking forward to the next hour with you and your audience.
Super. Yeah, thanks again. Really appreciate it. So first of all, your background, Tim, is remarkable. From serving in the Australian Special Forces to becoming a leader in mental health treatment and breathwork in particular. I'm curious what initially led you to explore breathwork and how did it evolve into the Breathwork in Bed program?
Great question, Dr. Mike. I'm not one of those people that traveled to India and did a bunch of spiritual stuff. Before I was in the Special Forces, I was a professional fighter. It was all about performance. And you get trained to deal with fatigue, just to get into the Australian Commandos, right? But when you're on deployment overseas, we're in Afghanistan, fatigue goes to a whole new level. You know, you're not just working 24/7. You know, you're losing your mates. You're having limbs blown off others. So it's high stress, not a lot of rest. And I just found myself at a point of complete fatigue. And when that happens, you know, I was arguing with my commander, and he told me to go away and just stare out of the desert and, you know, do a guard duty, right? Just a punishment. And I remember thinking, you know, it's like I've only got 2 cents worth of energy and I've got this overwhelming feeling that I'm going to die. What's the point? What is the point? And then after about 5 minutes of feeling absolutely crap, I thought, well, if I've only got 2 cents worth of energy, I better invest that wisely, you know? So one thing they teach you to do in the army when you're shooting a rifle, to get a proper sight picture, to line your sight up on a target, they get you to take a deep breath in, let it out slowly, and then gently squeeze the trigger. They're not into breath work by any means, but they have discovered the power of breath work for their own means. Okay. And a lot of people use that. They sort of have breath work as a bit of a side dish to their own agenda, so to speak. And what I found myself doing was, you never got anything that you'd call sleep, but I remember laying in the dirt of Afghanistan, completely tired. And instead of just shutting my eyes trying to sleep, instead of focusing on my right hand, which is my trigger hand, I focused on my left thumb and I took a deep breath, and it was like I was breathing into my left thumb and breathing light into my left thumb, breathing light into my left, pointer finger. Another deep breath, and I'd go through all my fingers, into my hand, into my body, through my whole body, just turning my body into this light state. And I found the sleep that I got so much more from that. And I'd wake up, instead of just having 2 cents worth of energy, I'd have 8 cents. So each time I got sleep, I dipped further into doing breath work. That increased the quality of my sleep. And sleep is something that you call a universal lever. There's things that you can do that improve. The one thing that you can do that improves everything in your life, and sleep is one of those things. And so I noticed that when I started getting my own energy back up and running, I then started having this abundance. So I started investing in some extra exercise. And it's not like we weren't busy, but I'd wake up, I'd do some push-ups, some sit-ups, lift some ammo crates, and then I was good for my day. But then I noticed that I could be having a good day, but I was in a team. So if my team was having a bad day, I'm having a bad day.
Mhm.
So I had to generate enough energy, not just for myself, but to invest in my team, because who did I want around me when good times turn bad? I wanted, strong, connected, less fatigued, men. And it didn't matter if I liked them or hated them. It was in my best interest to have them functioning at their 100%. So
Mm.
breath work started this chain of events, this really subtle, just improving quality of sleep. And then that led to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And now I've got a company because of it. And obviously there's a few things that happened, from that, but I hope that answers your question where it all came from.
Yeah, for sure. No, thanks so much for explaining that. It's really interesting. It's fascinating, really. I mean, as you're describing that whole process, a number of things came to mind, and one of them was this whole kind of spontaneous and in the moment discovery of these techniques. The aspect of the body scan kind of activity that you've kind of in a way stumbled on, but really have kind of captured that whole notion of focusing in on, in a very kind of mindful way, focusing in on just aspects of awareness of the body, focusing the attention on the body and then the breath. And then not only that, but also just kind of parlaying that right in the moment or shortly thereafter to really complex kinds of considerations in terms of, optimizing teamwork and optimizing performance in high stress situations. Really interesting, super fascinating.
Well,
Yeah.
Mike, what I was discovering back then, and I'm sure you know about it, and a lot of your listeners mightn't, but the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system,
Mhm.
and for me, I didn't know the name of it, but I just noticed if I could get that under control,
Yeah.
it's like everything worked out, like without fail.
Yeah.
Um, and the Chinese have got a saying they've been saying for thousands of years: control your breath, control everything.
Mhm.
And I want to give you a lived experience of controlling the parasympathetic nervous system, but I just gotta close a window here. 1 second.
Yeah, yeah, go for it. 100%. Yeah.
So parasympathetic nervous system. And if so one thing I do is I'll work with research bodies to take the academia talk and translate it into the common man talk.
Yeah, yeah, for
These
sure.
guys often operate in a stratosphere that most people don't know about, but if they want to get real results, they need to be able to translate it. So I've worked with very successfully some research bodies here in Australia, Gallipoli Medical Research, and I've been the guy to translate the academia into real life application,
Nice.
and we've been able to have some incredible outcomes because of those collaborations. Uh,
Mm.
Fun fact about me: I'm dyslexic. So I struggle to read and write. But back in the 70s, the official diagnosis for dyslexia is you're stupid, you know,
Yeah,
and you
true.
get told that enough, you start believing it. Um, that my pattern recognition is in the top percentile.
Mm.
And before I knew about this parasympathetic nervous system, I just knew that if there was a part of me that was in control, everything worked out.
Mm.
And you know, the the breath has everything to do with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm.
And the supporting research around that, I think I saw it in Frontiers in Human Neuroscientists. It shows that breath work is mass impacts on stress reduction,
Mm.
lowers cortisol levels, calms overactive stress responses, gives you mental clarity, enhances your neuroplasticity, enhances your focus and restorative sleep.
Mm.
Now, those are just words on the paper, but I want to give a lived experience where stress reduction, neuroplasticity, and focus came in handy. And it happened in 2009. on deployment in Afghanistan. We'd just gotten cut off. We were heading into an RPG ambush, a rocket propelled grenade ambush. And in that situation, Dr. Mike, we have the heavily armored vehicles put to the rear of the convoy because the rear vehicle's the least defended. So it's always the one that's attacked, right? And we were just in a four-wheel drive with the roof cut off. So all the heavily armored vehicles were told to go to the rear. But in the rush before this, we hit the kill box or this rocket propelled grenade ambush. We got cut off by this heavily armored vehicle, and we were the rear vehicle in the convoy, and we're heading into this. My vehicle commander looked back at us and said, "Fellas, if this goes the way I think it will, it's been an honor serving with you." So, when we talk about stress and, emotional regulation, it's like my brain went to mush. I couldn't think. I had no creative thoughts, certainly no neuroplasticity. My focus was gone. All I was focused on was I was angry as hell at this guy cutting us off because in my mind, he was trying to save his own ass. And there I was envisioning my own ramp ceremony. Okay. A ramp ceremony is where, you have the coffin of the fallen soldier or defense person covered in the flag, and you're carrying them down the ramp. And I saw my own ramp ceremony. I saw, my wife crying, my kids crying, and I'm like, all because this a-hole cut us off, right? So my brain just shut down. But then something happened. I asked myself this question: Tim, who do you know has done this before, and how did they get through it? And the fact was, I didn't actually know anyone. Australia seemed so far away, and the night got darker, and I began to feel very alone. But then I started thinking outside my own timeline, and I thought, well, you know what? I do know some people who on a night as dark as this came up against an enemy waiting for them. Now, in Australia, we have the Anzacs. These men on Gallipoli Cove went up this beach with the Turkish defenders embedded and waiting for them.
Right. That was what the movie Gallipoli is based on, right?
Correct. And and I just thought, what did those guys do? And they just kept moving forward. Despite hardships, despite an enemy waiting for them, the outside world could not stop them from seeing the power inside of them. And it was like, most of those guys are dead. They're not, there's over 100 years ago, but it was like they were there with me in that moment. It's like this sort of portal in time opened up. And on Anzac Day here in Australia, we say, lest we forget the sacrifices of those gone before it. But it's like this Anzac came through this portal, poked me in the chest, says, Tim, lest you forget, lest you forget the power inside of you, lest you forget look at the power of looking after your mates. And then I just took this huge breath. It was like the first breath I've ever taken, and my whole body lit up, and then all this brain function, all this neuroplasticity started kicking in. I'm like, okay, we're traveling at 35 kilometers an hour. We're hitting an RPG ambush. RPG self-destruct at 1,500 meters, or about 1,800 yards. So they're probably going to be shooting at us between 8 and 1,200 meters, and so we're going to be in the kill box for about 3 to 5 minutes by my guesstimation. Like all these functions started kicking in because I just controlled the parasympathetic nervous system. I could slow my own system down, and I could actually think, right? And then I'm like, well, and then it was like my vascular system jumped out in front of me, and I saw it like a street map. I saw the blood going down from my heart to my legs to my arms. And then I'm like, the only thing I need to keep pressure on is my brain. That's the only bit of critical kit here is my brain. So if I lose, I'm not going to worry about getting shot. I'm going to worry about like something exploding. So if I lose a limb, I've just got to hose clamp it and keep positive pressure to my brain. Okay. So I got 2 tourniquets and I put them on my chest because I obviously need to be ready to do that for, my brothers in the vehicle.
Mhm.
I thought, well, even if I do bleed out and die, the brothers here with me are going to revive me with a saline drip. So there was a lot of trust
Mm.
in in that, in that vehicle.
Yeah.
And that sort of control of my own nervous system, it's like it took the tourniquet off my overreaction and made me think above the
Yeah.
situation. It was just incredible.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
to the point where we're about to hit the kill box.
Mhm.
And I'm like, you know what? They might find my body in
Mm.
5 minutes' time.
Yeah.
But you know what they're not going to find? Magazines full of bullets. I'm expending all ammunition on this one.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, Tim, that's not a bad way to live. Whether you die in 5 minutes or 50 years' time, you know, expend it all. Your magazine contains simple bullets,
Mm.
but your mind, Mike, everyone's listening here, mind contains something so much more powerful than bullets, ideas, thoughts, dreams.
Yeah.
Why die with all those things still in your head? Um, and it was that little journey
Mm.
that made me realize that pretty much anything is possible if you can, as the ancient Chinese say, control your breath, control everything.
Mhm. Mhm. 100%. That is such a fascinating story. I mean, it really does cement this whole fascinating notion of that, as you say, the parasympathetic drive and the focus of the attention under those, extreme circumstances, how your attention was focused, but yet how all of that kind of, it's almost as though, yeah, far be it from me to suggest that maybe there is some kind of a spiritual component to it, but it's almost as though when you're in a situation like that, and by the way, um, and I always try to impress this upon any of my patients that are veterans, and I would have to say that, of course, we all owe you a great debt for your service, and I try and impress upon my kids that my generation, their generation, are lucky to not have to you know be kind of called forcefully into service. But if that's something that they'd be interested in doing voluntarily, I'd be very supportive. But again, just as a side note, thank you for your service in that regard. But yeah, just the focus of the intensity of the moment and bringing that into awareness and having all of that rich cultural and national history kind of behind you and kind of guiding your thoughts, and how you've translated that in the meantime into generosity and abundance, as you talk a lot about in your book, in terms of trying to parlay the lessons that you've learned in these experiences into helping others and to promoting health and wellness. So, yeah, super interesting. And in particular, this idea of sleep, because 100% I agree with you that sleep is such a foundational issue that I think, and the research is pointing in this direction, certainly in terms of mental health, that disrupted sleep really can set off a cascade of problems that can in turn then lead to a lot of mental health disorders. And so, while it used to be kind of considered that sleep disruption was more of a symptom of things like clinical depression, more recent research is kind of looking at it in the other direction, saying, well, disrupted sleep can actually be a risk factor for things like clinical depression. So, I think, in the audience, and we would really be interested in understanding more about how you did, the process of your connecting the dots between, better sleep and its impact on, the breath work and the neurological health and all that you're doing now to promote, mental health and wellness in the people that you present your program to.
Yeah. Well, look, Dr. Mike, everything you said there is true because poor sleep is like a petri dish for everything bad in your head.
Mm.
Okay. Perfect environment for all the bad stuff to grow. Um, and we weaponize sleep in the special forces. So we would actively deny our enemies sleep because we knew if we could take out their sleep for 3 nights, it would mess them up better than a bullet,
Sure.
you know? And then I come to and I want to sort of dovetail into this, that ambush experience. I noticed that my brain didn't work when I felt completely alone and I was tied up in my own thoughts and emotions. How dare
Mm.
that person do that to me? All right. Um, and and I'm going to layer in two different things here. the sense of isolation and the lack of sleep. They often are found in the same places. Uh, so when people feel connected, like Mike, if you knew I had your back 100% and you
Mm.
knew it, right? And I knew
Yeah.
you had my back 100%, like everything else is a very small detail. We're social mammals. We're meant to feel this sort of connection, this sort of tribe that's got our back around us.
Yeah.
But if we don't have that, then everything's a threat because everything is a threat. I can't drop my guard for a second because if I did, something bad's going to happen.
Hmm.
Okay. And so that really impacts your sleep. And when you're fatigued, you go into self-protect mode. When you're alone, you go into self-protect mode. So it's these two factors that aren't really on the spreadsheet, but it was those two factors. So I'm going to circle back, but I just want to sort of share that those two factors that aren't really on the spreadsheet, addressing those two things helped me achieve I had a lifetime goal of saving 40 veteran lives from suicide. And I didn't care if it took me the rest of my life. That was achieved within 12 months because I simply broke someone's isolation and then I got them out of fatigue.
Mm.
And people have 95% of everything they need inside of them. But if you're feeling alone and isolated, like I was when I was cut off, and how dare that mofo cut us off and I'm going to die because and I got all dramatic in my head.
Mm.
Once that isolation was broken, it's like my higher functioning kicked in. People know where they need to go,
Mm.
but then also getting them out of fatigue. So those two little factors are super important when it comes to having the person go inside themselves and see all the resources they have. And it's
Mm.
surprisingly how little people need when they get exactly what they really want,
Mhm.
you know? And so we would weaponize sleep because we knew if we took it out for 3 nights, it would mess them up better than a bullet.
Mm.
I come back to my home country and I see that there's so many people sleeping poorly. There's no visible enemy. But the thing about tactics in war is you have to discover your enemy's center of gravity. And it could be something as simple as sleep, right? You attack
Mhm.
their center of gravity, they get off-centered, and they're more worried about the stuff going on outside of them than what's going inside of them.
Mm.
Uh, and when I get back to the Western world, I notice that our center of gravity, as I've observed it, is our sense of self-worth. And our sense of self-worth is always being attacked by saying, look, you don't have any value underneath your own skin. For you to be valuable, you need to have this in your life. You can't be happy if you don't have that.
Mm.
You need a certain sneakers or car or all these different things. And you're not a worthwhile person if you don't have these things. There's no value inside of you. Um, and I'm like, that's pretty clever. If you can put someone into fatigue, they're going to consume more crap. If you can attack their their center of gravity, which is, as I've observed, our sense of self-worth, then they're going to be more likely to believe that, oh, yes, I do need to spend money on those shoes or that car, house, whatever it is. And it's not until you come up against a chronic, okay, I'll own this. It wasn't until I came when I was in my own PTSD that I realized that we're not in an age of information. We are in an age of marketing.
Mhm.
Okay. And marketing people are really good at speaking the unspoken words inside your heart. Oh
Mhm.
gosh, that's exactly what I need. And look at all these happy people saying that it works for them. Okay,
Yeah.
shut up and take my money.
Mm.
What a marketer will do, because a marketer wants your money, it doesn't want to improve you. All
Mm.
right. That's a very different set of goalposts. So they'll take dollars out of your pocket and put you into an early grave. I made the mistake of saying I couldn't sleep to a doctor. I lost 6 years of my life to pills.
Mhm.
Okay. No one told me that breath work could control my parasympathetic nervous system, put me into the best sleep ever, control my chronic pain, alkalize my body and mind, help me wake up in the morning feeling amazing. But no, I lost 6 years of my life and no one told me the cost of taking the pills. They just said, here's a
Mm.
bunch of pills. No one told me that, like, I think I lost a lot of time. Like, I don't have a lot of memories, and I think I lost a lot of memories. I was at a friend's place. It scared the hell out of me. I said, this place looks familiar. And then he looked at me like I was stupid. And he says, Tim, you helped me move in here.
Yeah.
And that really shocked me. I'm like, how many memories have I lost? And then off of these pills, they don't tell you just how hard it is to get off of them.
Yeah.
If you want to turn a second into a minute, and a minute into an hour and an hour into a whole week, coming off these things and the pain and discomfort you feel, like it is no joke. And I don't think they're so quick to give them to you, and they don't really tell you the cost of taking them and how hard it is to get off of them. But the point I'm trying to make here is marketers, first 6 pages of Google, marketers. Okay. So you really have to turn your seeker self on to find a healer, because healers aren't as obvious. And what a healer will do is, they know that they're human. They know that their energy is not enough for 2 people, but they are connected to something very powerful. And it might have taken them 10 years to master that connection that they have, but they can do it for you in far less time.
Mm.
And they're happy with their own redundancy. Okay. A marketer always wants a resale, wants you subscribing to more and more product. But a healer will connect you to something. And in my experience, a healer has to be like, a good deed is its own reward.
Mhm.
Because I've noticed, if you're a healer and you really connect somebody into something powerful, it's like they've always been like that. They were never in the dark. They were never disempowered. This is just the way life is now. The lights are on and I'm seeing clearly. So if you are a healer, don't expect much thanks. In my experience, only 2 to 3% of people actually go, "Oh, I saw what you did. I appreciate it. Thank you so much."
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it can be a bit of a thankless job, that you're not doing it for the thanks. And it's not as monetized as, say, some of the more easily accessible modalities that are on offer. So the good news and bad news about your healing journey, the good news is, when you find the right healer, healing takes far less time than you think. The bad news is, you will spend most of your time searching for the right healer.
Mhm.
Okay. And not all healers are born equal. In fact, some of them, I think, just make it worse. You
Yeah.
know, so many times I've had veterans say, "Look, I tried to get help," and I'm mindful that you're a psychologist as well, Dr. Mike. But yeah, not all psychologists are born equal, and some of them, I think, they've worked so hard to get that degree on the wall that they want to justify what they've learned. So when they're
Mhm.
in the room with somebody, they're thinking, well, here's what I've learned. I've got to now justify the fact that I've worked really hard for 7 years and see that it works here and now.
Yeah.
Um, and often when someone reaches out for help and they have a bad experience, they'll go, "No, I'm never going to do that again." And they'll self-isolate.
Mhm.
Veterans are particularly good at dropping off the map and just disappearing, because in our isolation, we can justify everything.
Mhm.
I tangented there a bit, but I hope that sort of gives you the guts of what I was trying to communicate.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I appreciate that. I mean, and I'm the first to, admit that, I think my profession has a lot of faults in terms of, I think there's a lot of, I would call, institutional capture with terms like the pharmaco-industrial complex, and the way that, I think it's pretty clear that, everything from, getting research funding to, drug trials, how they're designed and conducted. I think it lends itself to the training that we go through in terms of, what we would recommend for patients in terms of medications. And, it's complicated, in terms of things like, a lot of people, in countries like Canada that has universal health care, the bias is toward prescribing medication because maybe someone, doesn't have coverage that would allow them to go and see a psychologist or get the counseling that they might otherwise get if they could afford it. There's all these different considerations that create a situation that's totally not ideal. And so for sure, 100%. And I think coming back to, you know, first principles thinking and looking at the importance of foundational things like sleep is super important. It's interesting because just not only a week or so ago, a colleague friend of mine, also a physician, was asking me, because many of my patients are seniors, he was actually asking me for advice on his dad who was having trouble with sleep. His dad's probably in his 70s or 80s. And, honestly, I was at a bit of a loss because the reflex in my mind was, well, medication. But then, for someone that age, in a way, that's the last thing that you want to have them on is another medication, and a sedating medication at that. So, we explored some other things. But again, it is the Western medical reflexes to prescribe pills. And, and I'm sorry to hear that was a bad experience for you. And I've certainly heard over and over again how these sedative hypnotic medications can really be a very, very kind of a destructive sort of path for a lot of people who are looking, as you say, spending all this energy looking for a healer and kind of getting lost in this sort of maze of what Western medicine has on offer, which is often the exact opposite of what people need. So, and I mean, I was just it actually segues really well because, again, coming back to your book and the specific methods, understanding how many people struggle with insomnia and, in particular, this racing kind of thinking at night where the busy brain syndrome, they can't turn their worries and their thoughts off. Yeah, I think it would be super interesting if you're able to explain how your particular approach to breathwork techniques like the 4-7-8 method, how that, your experience in developing that and how that works to kind of quiet people's overthinking mind and prepare them to, enter into a more of a natural kind of deep restorative kind of sleep pattern.
Yeah, look, science is starting to catch up to, there's now data around the 4-7-8. There's the yogic pranayama. There's even this moon breathing. But there's an underlying principle that people need to understand, that once they understand, they see why breath work is so powerful. But I'm also going to tell you why there's also two big reasons why most people aren't doing it. So I'll just explain why it's so powerful. One of which is, and this dovetails nicely into the fact that psychologists, as much as they study for 7 years, they haven't figured out that the trauma that people experience goes down deeper than words can reach at times. Okay. So it's
Mhm.
like, they've got a rifle that shoots 200 yards and the target's 400 yards away. Yeah, they're shooting in the right direction, but they're not actually getting to the depth of where the trauma is. But the thing about breath work, if you think of us as living organisms that have evolved, before we were thinking, before we were sentient, before we were putting sort of paintings on rock walls, we were breathing. Before we were speaking, had the power to talk, we were breathing. And that deep ancient wiring lives inside of us still. And it actually outranks your thinking mind and your speaking mouth. And the two reasons why people don't do it is A, no one's making money from it. Okay. Like I said, the loudest voices in the room are marketers. And when someone's hurting, they just go, what's going to solve it? That's the loudest voice. I want Superman to come in and swoop in and solve this thing. And that's what they offer. Okay. And sometimes it's the lesser of two evils, but it does come at a cost. So what was I going to say? I got a bit lost there. Yeah. So the other reason why people don't do it is, think of your mind like a garden. Whatever you water grows. And for years, I was watering the weeds of stress. Okay. And to paint the picture, so I'd worked in the veteran space, had incredible results. But then I got divorced and there was a whole new war zone in my head. I was in my 40s. I'd lost my money, my house, my home, regular access to my kids, had a car, my dog, and I was sleeping in the lounge room of my parents' place. And you can imagine at 3 a.m., all these thoughts going through my head. And as much as I was a breathwork coach, and I knew that breathwork would calm my racing mind, it's like I couldn't do it because those stress weeds, I've been watering the weeds of stress in my head, right? And those weeds grow and grow and grow until eyeballs pop out of their head and they become sentient. Okay. They know the things that you do that feed them, and they know the things that you do that starve them. Okay. It
Mm.
shows up a bit like before you go to the gym, there's a part of you that says, oh, I don't want to do it. Let's do it later. Okay. They're the disempowered parts, knowing that if you go to the gym and you work out and you feel powerful, they're gone. They've kicked out. They're no longer existing. So they scream the loudest before they get kicked out. So there I was, 3 a.m. These stress weeds were running the show and loving it. And it's, even though I knew I was supposed to breathe, it's like I couldn't.
Mm.
And I got up and I was about to do self-harm in some way, shape, or form, alcohol, pills, whatever it was. But then I looked at my left thumb. I says, Tim, you can take one breath. Just take one effing breath. And I drove it into my chest as hard as I could. And I went, okay, this worked. 2 breaths. And I put 2 fingers into my chest. I took 2 breaths. 3, this is working. 3, get to 5. And then I, driving a finger in at a time, I got to 10. And then somewhere between 15 and 25, those stress weeds were uprooted and kicked out. And the rest of my brain said, thank goodness you kicked those mofos out of there. Okay, this is working. Don't stop. So breath work works because it outranks your thinking mind. But your thinking mind, especially at 3 a.m., is used to being in control, and it doesn't want to release that. And breathing is both a voluntary thing, involuntary and voluntary thing. You can focus on your breathing, but you also do it without focusing on it. So the reason I created, Breathwork in Bed was to have a coached experience. If you want to get to sleep, if you want to wake up in the morning, you're on a breathwork buffet, you hit what you want and it tells you to breathe a certain way. And trust me when I say, you will say, this is BS, it doesn't work. But then somewhere between breath 15 and 25, your neural pathways get alkalized and you start going, oh my gosh, here it is. Because most people don't know for years, like I didn't know, I was watering the weeds of stress. It was just normal.
Mm.
So breath work is powerful, but it does need to be guided. Otherwise, you tend to lose, the track of it. And the science is starting to catch up to it. And I do want to allocate some time at the end so we can have a lived experience. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I mean, I love the imagery, the metaphor. I think it's very, apt. And I think it really helps, to illustrate exactly, what that kind of experience is like mentally and how that connection, with the breath and with again, the attention, the focus of the attention and the focus of the attention and the intentional control of the thought and regulation of the breath in order to calm the emotion. I think it's brilliant for sure. I mean, I think it is, what do you think would be most helpful for listeners and viewers who aren't familiar with your program? Do you think it would be most helpful to talk more about the actual application of the 4-7-8, method in bed, or the breath work for waking, the morning routine, or both? I mean, I'll leave it up to you as to what you think would be the most useful. Yeah.
Everything I do, Dr. Mike, it's got to pass a P test. All right. 3 Ps. Ex-military. I love my acronyms. To be powerful, it's got to be positive, but it's also got to be permanent. So permanency of the message is to me the truest indicator that you're adding value to people, because there's all these powerful and positive circuses that come to town. People love it when you're there, but who are they the next day, a week later, a year later? So my intention with our interaction is to create permanency. So I'd love to show you and your listeners something that if they start using, you're going to be able to use for the rest of your life. It's not like there is research around the 4-7-8, the box breathing, the moon breathing, but because this is you and me talking, I want to show you Tim Thomas's private stash for breath work and self-regulation. It's worked for me and it's worked for many other veterans, and I'd love to show it to you now.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Yeah, fire away. That sounds great.
So the only caveat to this is you just need to be seated in a safe place. Don't be driving, operating heavy machinery. Don't be cutting up carrots. You want to be able to really focus and connect with your breath. And like I said, breath work isn't the only thing hard about it is because we've been breathing a certain way our whole lives. It's like you're born, you breathe, but then everyone sort of gets taught to limp, and everyone's limping, and it's just normal, right? So for you to walk normally, it's quite an adjustment. So I'm going to structure this to make this new way of breathing as easy as possible. So all we're going to do to start with is in a seated, comfortable position or laying down, just breathe in and let it go. Now breathe in and then breathe in again and again and again and again. Notice that little bit of extra space that opens up and just let that go. Okay, so we'll call your first breath your primary inhale. And when you breathe in again and again and again, that's your secondary inhale. So let's try and smooth this together. Let's breathe in and then breathe in again and again and again. And just let that go. Good stuff. All right. So you got your primary and your secondary. Now, what a lot of people don't know is if you pinch your thumb, Dr. Mike, is this going to be a video podcast or just audio?
Yeah, we got both. Yeah, audio and video.
So people with the video, look at the demonstration. I'll try and articulate it as best I can for those listening to audio. So you're going to be, what you don't know is in your fingers, you have a power button. Your thumb, your pointer finger, and your index finger, if you pinch them together, that gives you a bit of power in your breath. So what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in, and when it comes to the secondary inhale, we're going to pinch our thumb into our two fingers as hard as we can. Okay, so we're just going to be breathing in, then we're going to hit that turbo button and breathe into that secondary one. So you ready? Breathe in and then hit that turbo button. Pinch it together when you're at that turbo button and let it go. So let's just try that again. Blow it out. And then when you start breathing in, halfway through, hit that power button. And just let that go. Now, did you notice that when you pinched your fingers together, it sort of gave you a bit of a boost for your secondary inhale?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. So now we're going to juice that up even more. So these two power buttons that you've got, think of your chin and it's a triangle, right? So what we're going to do is when it comes to the secondary inhale, we're going to try and make that triangle really big. So we're going to raise our chin, look at the ceiling, pull those two power buttons away and breathe in as much as possible. I'll give you a little demonstration. So it's like you blow it out, breathe in, and really raise that chin, raise that chest as you hit those power buttons for your secondary inhale. Give that a try. So blow it all the way out. I encourage everyone to blow it out. And then when you're ready, breathing in, hit the power buttons, look to the ceiling, hold it up there, wriggle it around, wriggle your shoulders back and forth, feel how good it is to open up that space and let it out with a sigh.
Wow. Yeah. Fantastic. No, that's great. And yeah, and for folks who are just listening and not watching, it's really that emphasis on the stretching out of maybe Tim, if you don't mind just describing for the people that are just listening. Let's do it one more time. Yeah.
What we do is we're going to pinch our fingers. We're going to raise our chin and think of between your chin and your fingers as a triangle, right?
Right.
And when it comes to that secondary inhale, you want to stretch open that triangle like you're trying to pull it up over your chin, over your chest, and hold that position. So we're going to do that again. So just blow it all the way out. If you're listening, blow it all the way out. Start breathing in, have your power ready and hit your buttons. Raise your chin, look at the ceiling, open your chest. Now hold that, wriggle it, feel yourself stretching out that upper chest. Wriggle your shoulders, wriggle, wriggle, wriggle. And then with a delicious sigh, let it out.
Fantastic. That's 100%. That's wonderful. That whole idea of just expanding the lungs, I often will explain to my kids, if we're working out or something and they're feeling lazy and they're losing their breath, and I'll say, really think about, you want to be thinking about breathing right into the very bottom of your back, because that's where the anatomy of the lungs actually extends all the way back down there. You want to expand all that up, right? So that technique, it strikes me, that does exactly that, right? You're just opening, again, it's this whole kind of interface between the physical and the psychological and the spiritual, right? It's this opening of posture, opening of intention. Super interesting.
Well, yes. And we're only halfway through it. You're going to love the
Yeah.
next.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's go.
So that stretching open, raising the chin, opening the chest. Think of your nerves like a bunch of hoses. Okay. And when you pinch a hose, you've got less water running out. Okay. So when we're hunched over, we're basically pinching off our power. So when we open up, proper breathing gives you proper alignment. So what we're going to do right now, I just want to discuss here this divide your lungs into three: your top third, your middle third, your bottom third. So we just focused our breath into our top third, our secondary inhale.
Hmm.
I call this the breath of possibility. When I notice that when I've got crap in my head that I don't want there, I'll naturally start leaning forward. Okay. Almost protecting myself. Things get harder because things are harder when I'm pinching off my own power. So I'll do this in public. If there's stuff in my head I don't want there, I use my fingers, and I do it discreetly. I'll have, finger in my pocket or by my side, and I will use these little turbo buttons where I'm pinching my thumb into my two fingers as a circuit breaker. So I'll breathe into this breath of possibility, and I'll really snort it. Okay. Like flare my nostrils and snort. Because a rapid inhale into this top third, my experience of it is it makes what's impossible possible.
Mm.
Okay. So, and often my thoughts need a physiological interruption. So I pinch my fingers together and that interrupts it. And I focus on that. Okay. It's like it's the breath, I'm coming up for air and I've been underwater for a while. Cause that's what it feels like when I'm hunched over in negative thoughts. My breathing gets shallower and shallower. So having that pinch of my fingers forcing me up, it's one activity that we can actively bring into our day and layer into our daily existence. So people ask me how when I show them this technique, they say, how often should I do this technique? I say, well, when I was on pills, I didn't just have pills in the medicine cabinet. I had it in my cupboard, in my car, in my glove box, in the fruit bowl, stashed in all different areas because I was always trying to self-regulate.
Mm.
So this little technique for me is my self-regulator. So whenever you feel like you want to get a better level of normal, tap into this and you'll be very surprised, because we've only gone through half of it, but I just want to speak to this part here. This alignment, this breath of possibility is something that you can literally use straight away. So we're going to, like I said, we're going to juice this up even more by, when we breathe in, I want you to really sort of suck hard. It's not going to be a slow inhale. It's going to be quite a rapid nostril flaring suck as we drive our fingers into our thumbs and we raise our chest, almost like we're trying to lift a heavy weight, but we're pulling that air in. So this is going to be a little more rapid on this inhale. Okay, so are we ready for this? Let's just blow it all out. Breathing in, now rapidly squeeze and raise the chin, snort the nostril all through the nose. You want to sort of hear that nose, okay, wriggle it around, feel how good it is to push that possibility around the place, and then let it out with a nice sigh, louder the better.
Nice one. Yeah, that's fantastic.
So one thing my coach always taught me, and I don't know if this is true or not, was that before I executed a combination, he'd always tell me to snort through my nose, like a real snorting, violent inhale, because he said that it sucked this air through the sinuses into your brain. It's like it prepped your brain for action. Whether that's true or not, there is a very powerful application in that rapid inhale through the nose and then opening up the posture. Now, Mike, I did watch your technique. I think were you breathing in through your nose or your mouth in that last one?
Well, initially it was through my mouth, and that's by nature, I'm a mouth breather. And as I had mentioned earlier when we were chatting, with having read James Nestor's book, Breathe, and I've become a big fan of nasal breathing. And, I sometimes will recommend to patients to try the yogic pranayama type breathing with alternating nostril breathing. And I sometimes will do that myself. So I love the accessibility, of the additional features, that you've developed here with like the turbo boost and the trigger points. But yeah, maybe if you don't mind, walk me through it again.
We're going to exhale all the way. We're going to close our mouths and breathe in rapidly, but flare your nostrils. So all the way out, 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 out. Get those nostrils ready, and then really, as rapidly as you can, suck it through your nose. And just wriggle it around, wriggle it, wriggle it, wriggle it. And when you feel that sigh wanting to come out of your mouth, let it out with a Okay.
Nice. That's awesome.
All right. So we've got the breath of possibility nailed. Okay. Using your nostrils, your rapid inhale, your power up buttons and your chin. That's awesome. Okay. Now we're going to push that to your breath of peace. So your breath of possibility is your top third, your middle and your lower third where your belly button is, that's your breath of peace. Okay. Your belly button area is where you have the most vascular part of your lungs. So you have a better gas exchange in that part. And it's very important to be seated when you're doing this one, because in this experience, you can drift to the point where you feel so relaxed. If you wouldn't want to be driving or cutting up carrots, okay, when you do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that breath of possibility, really suck it in, okay? And then we're going to hold that breath, and then like a tube of toothpaste, we're going to roll ourselves from the top down, feel that air going from our upper chest, middle chest into our belly. And our hands are going to be on our belly. And we're going to hold it like a balloon. We're going to squash it down there. We're going to pressurize it. And the next thing we do, you've got pressure in your belly. You're going to just let it bleed out of your mouth. It's going to come out with a hiss. So it's like your mouth is trying to stop the air coming out, but there's just a little bit of a bit like a pressure cooker letting out a little bit of a hiss. Okay. And the longer you can make that hiss, the better it's going to be. We're going to do this 3 times and allow your body to experience it. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Be as relaxed as possible. And like I said, sometimes we have to give ourselves permission to relax into this because we're so used to, this is an activity. There's a right way and a wrong way. There's no right or wrong way here. And you've got the rest of your life to practice, provided you're planning on breathing for the rest of your life.
Nice.
Okay. So let's do the breath of possibility, and I'll coach you through what we do next. So get your power buttons ready.
Okay.
Blow it out. Shut your nose and really snort that air. Snort. Now hold it and wriggle it. It should feel really good, like the best stretch. Wriggle your shoulders up and down. Now holding your breath, just roll your head forward, roll your head forward, roll your head forward, collapse it down. Feel the air. Put your hands on your belly. Push it into your belly like a balloon. Let your head relax down low. Squeeze it down low. Now let it out super slow with a hiss. If you can make that hiss last 20 seconds, that would be amazing. Now just treat your body like it's an inflatable castle that's just relaxing and letting go of all its tension. Just collapsing down. Let it all collapse down, collapse down, collapse down.
Fantastic.
We got 2 more of those.
Nice. Okay.
So really rapid inhale, push your power buttons, hold it, wriggle it, open it up even more, and then let that just collapse down. Let your head collapse forward. Feel that air going from your upper chest, middle chest, lower chest. Let your head hang forward. Have your head sort of almost between your knees, and then pressurize it in your belly and let it out super slow. And as it's coming out, just let your whole body collapse like it's an inflatable toy, just collapsing down, all the tension's leaving it. Everything's just melting away as you exhale.
Whew. Nice one.
And this last one is going to be even better. So we're going to try and have a nice long power up. Breathing in, snort it, hit your power buttons, raise your chest, feel how good it is to stretch it around like you're opening up your heart, opening up your chest, feels really good. And then holding that breath, just let collapse down, collapse down, collapse down, collapse down. Put your hands on your belly, feel all your air going down into your belly. Relax your head forward, almost like it's between your knees. And then when it's down as low as you can, let it out with a hiss. And allow your body just to deflate. Feel all that tension leaving your body, your face, your neck, your shoulders, your hands, your lower back, your legs, your calves. It's all just leaving with the exhale.
Oh, that's awesome. Ah, super relaxing. That is fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I can feel, I tend to hold my posture pretty tight anyway. Every time I go see my massage therapist, I'm always in trouble for having way too much tightness in my shoulders, especially. And yeah,
Oh,
this kind of
I
thing is
saw it.
really going to help that.
When you started with that exhale, you just went boom,
Yeah. Yeah.
and this is what, how I said breath outranks the mind.
Hmm.
Our busy little mind, it'll send a signal to the body saying, I want to keep busy. I need energy. So it'll create energy by keeping your shoulder tight.
Yeah.
Okay. And they feed each other. So your breath outranks that. Then all of a sudden, you know what? I don't need that.
Yeah. 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 That's fantastic. That is so great.
And that was just 3 breaths. Okay.
Yeah. That's what I love about it. I mean, it's so accessible, right? And if people just, this is what I'm so excited about, and I'm so grateful that you're sharing your technique and your wisdom this way, because my hope is that, the more we can get this out there and communicate and educate people about this, the more that they'll be able to take control and find benefit from these accessible techniques, so that they won't have to go, on these wild goose chases and get hooked on pills, and they can find resources and treatments that'll help them sleep better, help them to be able to master and control their own thoughts and anxieties and worries. It's fantastic. No, and I think I'm especially grateful that you're able to, show us in real time and help to walk us through this. It's so, you know, as I say, much appreciated and fascinating as well, just in terms of the whole connection with, what your experiences are and the science and the techniques that you've developed. I think it's awesome.
Well, I just invite everyone listening to consider that if they got anything from that, how many other people do you know that would benefit from that as well? So you could be the healer that brings healing to others. Okay. Now, if we just obviously I've got an app that you can access twice a day when you sleep, when you wake up. It's a whole buffet. But if you just take what you've learned and apply and master it yourself and then simply show someone else, how easy is that? Okay. You could be the one that makes all the difference to them. You could have thousands of people left and right of you willing you on saying, if you can master this for you, you can master it for us. And you will not just get the benefit of experiencing yourself, you'll get the joy of sharing this with others and seeing how it impacts on others. Giving people that possibility, that peace.
Yeah, 100%. No, again, it's a very powerful message, and I think it's so interesting. I was also interested. You had mentioned earlier, that you've been collaborating with um, other organizations in
Oh yeah.
terms of researching, and Maybe if you don't mind just kind of explaining that a little more, and I'd be super interested to find out more about that.
Okay, so I'm a firm believer in collecting data correctly. You can argue with me, but you can't argue with the data. Therefore, you can't argue with me, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, research bodies have, especially in the veteran space, operate like alien spacecraft. They land, probe your deepest secrets, and then bugger off without even buying you a coffee. Okay, so my part was to understand what the intention of the research body was, and that was to create. I wasn't interested in anyone that didn't want to create working tools that could be paid forward, because again, data done correctly can be wrapped around the globe, but it can also be pushed forward in time. And I love the idea of something, working when I'm sleeping. So they saw that there was a problem with military members transitioning into the civilian world. And no one was addressing it, but these people saw that that was an issue. And I'm like, I want to help these people because this is the elephant in the room. And so they wanted to create a resource that wasn't just for the members going through it, but also for the GPs that would deal with veteran clients. Okay. So understanding that in my case, when I said, look, I can't sleep, instead of just giving pills, they would give them this questionnaire saying, well, in your defense life, in your military life, you experience these things. How is that going now in the civilian world? And it would ask questions, you get a score out of whatever. And then you could say, oh, actually, I actually don't have any social network. In the military, I had a social network. Now I don't. And I'm suffering because of it. And it's impacting on my sleep because, and again, this is why I like looking at sleep, because I can kid myself in the daytime, tell myself I'm fine, but all the imbalances I'm living with show up in my sleep. It also shows up in my alcohol intake. I used to drink a lot of alcohol. I said I was fine. I just had to drink maybe 12 beers before I could speak to my then wife. I call her my then wife, not my ex-wife. And so where are we going with this?
Yeah, I mean, it's
No,
just
we were going somewhere. We were going.
yeah. The whole notion of
Oh yeah. The research.
totally, yeah.
We created a product called which asked the right questions the right way in the right format to then give a individual and prescribed response to the member who was going through it. So in the past, you'd go in and say, look, I'm struggling. They'd just give you a bunch of pamphlets.
Yeah.
But now we've created this tool that asks in your language, let's just say, do civilians piss you off? Okay. Oh yeah, that's my language. Here's this, do these things. And you're answering these questions and you're like, this person gets it. Oh my gosh, they get it. I feel known. I feel heard. I feel seen. Okay. Yeah. So that's because, the academia took someone, a dyslexic guy like me who failed high school, but can see patterns, and sculpt it to the talk of the people they're trying to reach.
Yeah.
And then your score after this, after these questions said, well, these are the prescribed things that will work for you, as opposed to like 20 pages of information. Here's 2 paragraphs that are relevant to you, So it's called the MCARM product, MCARM. You can look that up. And my team and I started raising money for Gallipoli Medical Research. That's the one that worked with veterans. They also do work with cancer and liver disease, respiratory disorders. And this is why I was really happy to be on here today. The brain for me is where I live as a human, because I can damage my hand and I'm Tim with a damaged hand. But if I damage this thing, I'm no longer Tim. my internal compass is off. So in Queensland, we have the Queensland Brain Institute. Very smart people doing a lot of research to create tools to apply in the real world. And I think our initial goal was $50,000. We ended up giving both organizations, both the Gallipoli Medical Research Foundation and the Queensland Brain Institute, checks for over 500,000 each.
Wow. Wow. That is fantastic. Congratulations. I mean, that's just amazing. That's just such heartening news to hear, about how much of an impact, a positive impact, not only at the individual level with the kind of education that we're offering here, but just on such a broad, level with that kind of impact and helping others. It's just so heartwarming to hear about that. And so thank you. Thank you again for all your efforts.
I gotta jump in here and get real.
Oh,
And it brings me to something like, because you're so busy doing stuff, you don't often get perspective. And when you acknowledge me, then I'm like, actually, that was pretty good that we did that. And I went back to where it actually started. So I got out of the military in 2010, and in 2011, I was about to kill a man. Government wasn't paying me. This would have been murder. I had reached rock bottom with my PTSD, a lot of drinking, family was falling apart. And I'm like, what do you do when everything goes wrong?
yeah.
I guess everyone's telling me I should see a psychologist. And that didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, why do I want to see a guy I've never met before? What's he going to do? And I am doing it because I felt forced to do it to start with. And this guy wasn't just incompetent. I could handle incompetence. He was apathetic. I saw him, all the stuff that I saw in service. And at the end, he's like, oh, do you think it was a problem with your mum and dad? And that's when everything in the room froze.
Mhm.
And I was very aware that he had a glass frame psychology degree behind him. And in my state of disconnect, it made a lot of sense to grab that glass frame and feed it to him, because he was supposed to be a healer and he's causing.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
to remove him from the whole system, this was my postal moment. And I get out of my chair to do this. And then I feel a hand on my chest saying, red flag. Tim, you're the toughest mofo you know. How many others are struggling in a system that doesn't seem to understand or want to make you better?
Mm.
And then I sat back down, Mike, and that's when I saw them.
Mm.
I saw thousands of people left and right of me saying, Tim, if you can find a way forward for you, you can find a way forward for us.
Mm.
And that's when I said, look, it doesn't matter if it takes me a week, a month, a year, a decade. I've got to find a way forward, because then I'm going to find a way forward for all these other people. And that's when my isolation got broken. Because when I was isolated, I could do dumb stuff like murder a guy. I'd be in prison right now.
Mm.
But when I got connected, I started seeing that, no, this experience is not important. What's important is finding a way for all these other people. And I just want to sort of draw people into this, because everyone listening is up against something.
Mm.
Could be work, relationship, whatever it is you're up against. But the golden question to ask yourself is this: honestly, how many other people are in the same situation you are in right now?
Mm.
And really give it a number, because they're not make believe, they're real,
Mm.
and they're left and right of you, willing you on. And if you make choices to move forward, these are people you probably haven't even met yet. And they're going to be saying things like, you know what, I'm so glad you chose what you chose, back early 2025, because you've made our lives so much easier now.
Mm.
Okay. So think about yourself as not, give yourself whatever number is you've given to the people that are up against whatever you're up against. Give that a number. Let's just say 10,000.
Mm.
So the way I see it is, you're no longer just one person go and get healing. You're 10,000 people going to get healing. You're 10,000 people improve yourself. You're not, 1 in 10,000. You're 10,000 in one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then you start seeing the power of your own growth. It's not what we do that gives value to others. It's what we've come through. And if you can really get that tipping point going in your head, there's not a goddamn thing that can stop you.
Yeah, boy, that is so powerful. I mean, just coming from such a pivotal moment like that again. I mean, that's strikes me from our conversation today is that there have been a number of these pivotal moments in your life that you've confronted and you've battled through, and you've translated those into this program and this attitude and this abundance and generosity that is helping so many people. And again, whether it's the medications or kind of like a scripted kind of way of trying to offer counseling. I mean, when that doesn't go well for people, when there's a lack of sort of a genuine, connection behind it, and I've seen this, and I've probably struggled with this myself, in terms of people I've tried to help or people that I've seen myself for help. I mean, when it's almost as though when you're following a recipe, but the recipe, what the recipe is intended to prepare isn't really what the person needs or is actually wanting. Again, you're sending them, you're walking down the wrong path with them, and you can go as fast as you want, and you can go for as far as you want on the wrong path. But if it's the wrong path, when you get there, you're going to be sorely disappointed, right? So having this genuine kind of really, again, um, foundational kind of uh, and again, I'll say spiritual because I think there is that spiritual connection with the breath. I mean, it's there in all the wisdom traditions, right? Look at the breath as an essential part of health and wellness, right? So again, really just so interesting, and I appreciate your honesty and bringing your personal story and all these pivotal moments to the discussion. I think it really kind of solidifies the genuine and the authenticity of what your program has to offer. So thank you.
Thank you for your kind words, Dr. Mike. And, if anyone's getting anything from this, to go through the looking glass here, you were actually there with me in April of 2011, willing me on.
Yeah, lovely. I think that's just a really poetic way and a really kind of impactful way of yeah, just getting to that notion that, we are all together. We are all in this together. There's this common energy that unites us all. And so tapping into that, there's a huge therapeutic uh, benefit to that
Can
kind
I,
of
can I
mindset.
speak, Dr. Mike?
Please do. Yeah, 100%.
So a lot of people throw around the term "we're all connected." I tend to think that the way I see it is we're all living on the same grid.
Mm,
Okay, this interconnected grid, and we're feeling each other far more than what we admit. And that becomes really obvious when someone from that grid that you care about gets removed. They die.
mm,
So those invisible golden strands that you're always feeling that person, they get felt when they're severed.
mm,
All right. And that's obvious. And I've generally found that people's awareness levels is relative to how connected they are in the grid. Okay. But my theory is just like you feel it when someone's physically removed, if when someone's physically improved, then that benefits you as well.
mm,
And it really made a big impact to me when I realized that I can't hurt or screw anyone over without hurting or screwing myself over.
mhm.
And that really stood out to me. So I had to, even in my thoughts, I couldn't have that as a thing. The classic saying, "Do unto others as you do to yourself." Like I never really got that until I actually saw us all sort of continually feeling each other on this grid. Um,
Mm,
and obviously I had that experience of Afghanistan. I'm a pretty thick-headed guy. I had to go to that extreme to realize when the person next to me is stronger, I'm stronger. You
mhm.
know,
Yeah.
um, but I do want to sort of build on this. Uh, Generosity can be done wrong. Generosity has to be done in a way that works for you. And my favorite saying these days is, I don't give of myself anymore. I give of my abundance.
Mm.
Okay. Cause back when I was on the coalface, working face to face with veterans, I had some incredible results that no one else had done before. But what nobody knew was every 6 or 7 weeks, I'd have to write myself off blind drunk for 3 days, because I was giving of myself. I wasn't giving of my abundance.
Mhm.
And the way it works is, okay, so if I'm just adequate, if I'm just at 100%, and it's the right thing to do, be generous with somebody, I give away 10%. There was a part of me that said, you know what? I've given you 10%. You better do something with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So even in your thoughts, right? But if I connect to myself powerfully first and I make 500%, I can give 20% away a day. It doesn't matter if people love it, hate it, tell me to F off. I'm in touch with something so much more powerful.
Yeah.
So being in touch with something so much more powerful is it changes the way you see the future, because, we've all been hurt, we've all been taken from. And what I noticed, I would naturally try to protect myself. And in doing so, I would disconnect myself from that, let's call it a higher power.
Yeah.
Or you could just say your energy is like money. How you invest it's how you get it back.
Yeah.
Okay. So investing in yourself first, and then out of that abundance, you give to others. And you can do that regularly and consistently. Um, so my parents, I grew up, they worked with really low socioeconomic people. They worked within the church, kind of the people that would hang out underneath bridges. Okay. So they were super generous, kind-hearted people. And I tried to be generous the way they were, and it never worked for me.
Mhm.
So I had to find my own way of being generous, which was on the back of feeling powerful within myself. Um, and I noticed, and this is not really spoken about these days, or at least out loud, that especially for us men, our generosity and happiness is relative to how powerful we feel.
Mhm.
If you want to see a stingy, unhappy guy, he doesn't feel very powerful, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So being generous is doing the things that light you up, creating an abundance out of that and giving out of that. So I'm a particularly gifted physical guy. So I'm always looking for ways to be physically generous. Yesterday, when I'm walking my dogs back to my house, I see the kid up the street unloading corrugated iron, and he's struggling. So I put my dogs away and I go up there and I just helped him load the corrugated iron. And it was
Mhm.
easy. Like if
Yeah.
it was in a different physical state, that wouldn't be so easy.
Yeah.
So part of a person's natural generosity is self-mastery of the
Mhm.
things that light you up. And obviously, you'd never actually get there if you've got those unhealed parts. So getting healing is very much the first start. Getting healing for whatever you're up against
Yeah.
is, from the outside in, the most valuable thing about you. When someone else has gone through, I'll use an example that I've never gone through, say breast cancer. If you're going through breast cancer, you're going to be the one to speak those words to break the isolation of all those people going through breast cancer. No one else is going to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
breaking isolation, as we've discussed, is one of the most powerful things. And then, once you've got your healing, then you tap into your own particular unique energy signature, the thing that you invest into that gives you so much back. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy. Like there was a part of me before I went for a run this morning. I wanted to be at my best for this interaction between you and me, but it was raining. I didn't want to run, but when I did it, I felt so much better afterwards. So it cost me $100. I didn't want to spend it, but it gave me $1,000 back. So doing the things that are somewhat hard, but then noticing how much they give you back. I
Yeah.
hope all that sort of dovetailed in
Yeah. Yeah.
to the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, 100%. I mean, I think particularly for, people who are caregivers, and in some sense, it's really hard to know sometimes when, your generosity is something that you end up coming to resent because you're depleted yourself. There's this great song by Noah Kahan. I don't know if you know this singer-songwriter Noah Kahan, but one of his great songs along these lines is called "Moving Sideways." I'll send you a link of that.
Yeah.
And it talks a bit about how, just, one of the lines is something like, I guess, even though I feel empty, I guess I'll keep, even though my tank is empty, I guess I'll have to just keep driving, kind of thing, right? So, but yeah, no, I think that the whole idea of finding your passion, and then finding, your agency, another approach that I really think is one that resonates really well with this discussion is Paul Conti's, a psychiatrist, who talks about the importance of meaning and agency as a way to help to enhance positive emotional states. So that's bringing the abundance and the generosity as part of what brings meaning and agency into a person's daily life. And part of what's interesting, just maybe this can segue into how viewers and listeners can find out more about your book and your app and your program. But one of the things that just brings to mind about the app is that, the generosity kind of practice for in the morning, maybe you can explain that a little bit for us, and then point us in the direction of where we can find out more about your program.
Sure. To start with, the f- the f- the first thing I think people need to do is connect to themselves powerfully. So it's really hard to be generous if you're not sleeping very well.
Yeah.
So, being generous with yourself, with breath work, going to sleep amazingly well. When you're getting out of bed, instead of just throwing those heavy legs out off the side of the bed, you're doing breath work, you're activating your body. And then if you were to listen to the Breathwork in Bed app in the mornings, it doesn't just connect your body and activate your body. It offers mirror work where you say these positive affirmations in the mirror. Now, I'm an army dude. I'm not normally into this sort of stuff, but I'm saying this stuff in the mirror. I'm like, crap, man, this stuff works. And the wisdom of the army is if it's stupid and it works, it ain't stupid. So because it worked, I'm like, I have to have it in there. So just saying these words, just staring at the mirror, it's just so super powerful. But and so getting yourself out of fatigue, but then there's an offering, and there's no compulsion here. But my theory is if you want to double the energy and connection you're feeling, all that energy that you've spent connecting to, it goes full circle when you connect to another human being.
Yeah.
And so doing a simple act of generosity. Now, it doesn't have to cost you anything. It could be letting someone in traffic. It could just be when you're having a conversation with somebody, really let them be seen and heard and known. And that's beyond words. You just hold a space for them, and you just watch that other person really respond. And just say, for one person today, I'm going to really let them be seen, heard, and known.
Hmm.
And it could even be the checkout chick that's doing your groceries, whatever that is. And you'd be surprised when you do that from a position of abundance and deliberately, just how much energy you get as a return.
Hmm.
So when you wake up in the morning, and a lot of people get a lot of benefit from this, instead of just hitting the alarm clock and forcing all that lead weight out, breath work transforms that lead into gold. Body activation. Your feet are hitting the floor very differently. Mirror work, saying positive affirmations in the mirror, connects your mind, your body, sets your day up. And then you're offered to do an act of generosity, whatever that looks like. And you're then saying it's one thing to do it yourself, but to share it with others has a multiplying effect. So we have on the app something called the Generosity News Wall, where you just stick up a photo of act of generosity, and you write a few words, and people can see it there. So the goal of that is multiple, but the current narrative in our society, Michael, when people say, "Oh, the world's a terrible place," I say, is that you saying it, or is that the TV speaking through you? Is that all the mainstream media just speaking through your mouth right now? Have you really made your mind up that this is terrible, or have you allowed some other narrative to come through you? So I want to change the narrative on my phone. I want a little notification saying, Craig from Canada took his neighbour's bins in, shoveled his neighbour's driveway, picked up some cigarette butts. That's my favorite. I like picking up cigarette butts. Let someone in traffic. So to see that the current narrative you are usually hearing from disempowered, disconnected people. So imagine getting little notifications on your phone from empowered and connected people.
Mhm.
The empowered and connected people, we have the numbers, but we don't have the spotlight. So the generosity news wall is a chance to change the narrative and put the spotlight on the empowered and connected people. And if you wanted to be a part of all this, I'm doing a 28-day free trial for the Breathwork In Bed app. You can pick up your smartphone or Android. You type in 3 words, breathwork, 1 word, in bed. And it's a subscription model, so you get the 28 days free. It's less than 2 copies for a month of breathwork. It'll ask you 2 simple questions. When you want to sleep, when you want to wake up. So you have these things falling out of your phone exactly when you need them, And it's particularly handy at 3 a.m. when your head's doing these ones, going a million miles an hour, and you've got a button to push to put you back into sleep. That saved my life on so many occasions. And that is my sort of, it took me like many, many years to have that connection. And now I've packaged it in such a way where people can just search 3 words, put in when they sleep, when they wake up, and we take care of the rest. Because I can't do what you do. I can't do what anyone does listening to this. But if I can help improve your sleep, then you're going to do what you do even better.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks so much for explaining that. We'll put all of the relevant links
Yep.
to all of your program information in the show notes, so people watching and listening can check that out in the show notes below. And I really would encourage you, I'm going to myself, I'd encourage everyone watching and listening to check it out. Tim's program offers so much, but we've talked about today in terms of the benefit for sleep and health and wellness in general through foundational practices like breath work and fostering the gratitude and building an intentional gratitude practice. I think it's just so exciting. It's so interesting. And again, I can't thank you enough, Tim, for sharing your time, your insights, and your wisdom with us today. If there's anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap up, I'll just let you again offer anything else. But thanks again for appearing on the Neurostimulation Podcast today. Really appreciate it.
I was really looking forward to being on here, and I really want to support people with the Breathwork In Bed app. I'm not the powerful one here. I'm just the guy that I see myself as the person that introduces you to the love of your life, and you're going to have that connection for the rest of your life. But I really want to ask you one last question, because you're in a position where I'm not in, and you're. Yes, I'm going to ask you like this. So, how do you see these tools? The natural techniques like breath work,
Mhm.
and the advanced therapies like neurostimulation, shaping the future of mental and physical health?
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate the question. I mean, I think part of the reason why I'm so excited about this kind of an approach, with the breath work and the particular focus on improving sleep, is that, kind of like we were talking about throughout the discussion at times, the kind of the legacy, what I tend to call the legacy approach to treating a lot of health in general, but particularly, mental health issues relates to either a combination or either or of medication and or counseling slash psychotherapy. Now, I want to say that for many people, medications work really well and they're very important. And I would encourage people to work with their health professionals in tailoring their own treatment plan for whatever condition that they're dealing with and overcoming. But for a lot of people, in my own practice, and I think just in my personal life, friends, family, it strikes me that sometimes the cart gets put before the horse, and that often I'll try to figure out Well, have you explored lifestyle options like exercise, looking at diet, looking at these other kinds of foundational sorts of approaches like mindfulness and breath work and just optimizing sleep. So I think if, what I'm hopeful for and I'm excited by approaches like yours is that the more that, with and I think part of it as well is this, I used this term before, the pharmaco-industrial complex. And I think part of it is that, you know, legacy media and advertisements on TV and what have you, it's all part of that machine that at the end of the day is geared towards getting the prescriber to write a prescription and the pharmacist to dispense the pills, right? So by educating people with these kinds of the way that we're doing now with podcasting and all the different avenues now in the alternative media is hopefully going to be helping people to understand that there are other options that maybe they can find the right path that you were talking about right at the very beginning sooner rather than going down, the wrong path and going on wild goose chases and having them, lose months, years of their life to, you know, going down the wrong path of different treatment options that are the right ones for them in the first place, right? So that's exactly what I'm excited about. And yeah, I mean, perhaps neurostimulation options might be part of these different kinds of alternatives that people might want to try as opposed to, or perhaps even in addition to other treatments like medication and counseling. My sense is that probably a combination of things, right? And this is the thing, it doesn't have to be either or, but perhaps it can be part of, a whole combination of approaches that can be tailored to fit an individual's particular needs that is going to be the best to help that person be as healthy and to flourish as much as possible. So, yeah.
No, awesome. Well said. Well said. I love it. I love it. And yeah, I think with our powers combined, we're doing our best to make the world a better place.
100%. That's awesome. Thanks so much
Oh,
again.
I'm going to just
Really
add a little value.
go for it. Do it,
I'm
please.
going to put in a link. The first 20 people that click on it will get my audiobook for Breathwork in Bed free. And I'll also include the link to guide people through that breath of peace and possibility as well.
Love it. I think that's so generous. Again, just exemplifying the generosity. So thanks so much. Alrighty. Well, if you found value in today's episode, I'm sure you have. And I'm sure, therefore, that you'll share it with as many people as you can think of, and if you have someone in mind in particular that you think could benefit from Tim's message, please do share it. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Fill out the comments, ask questions in the comment section below, reach out to us on our various social media outlets. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us. And again, remember to breathe deeply, practice the techniques that Tim has so kindly illustrated for us here today. Remember to rest fully now. Hopefully your sleep is going to improve as you start to implement these techniques and stay connected. So yeah, thanks for listening. Remember to stay curious and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks again, Tim. Have a good one.
Bye
Happy
now.
New Year, by the way.
Yeah, Happy New Year too from down under.
Cheers. All the best. All right. Thanks again. Bye-bye now.